Welcome, dear listener. Take a deep breath in and slowly let it go. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw unclench. Let the weight of the day melt gently into your bed or pillow. Tonight, you're safe, warm, and surrounded by peace. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the rhythm of your breath fall into a soft lull, and the quiet hum of imagination rise. Let each word be a gentle thread, weaving calm into your thoughts. Our story begins. In the year 1282, in a candlelit tower tucked in the northern wing of Clybourne Castle, high above the mossy courtyards and torchlit halls, where ivy curls around stone walls and windows catch the sigh of the wind, there is a round room, a little sanctuary known only to a few, the tapestry room. Its ceiling arches like the inside of a seashell, and its walls are softened by hand-woven tales of centuries past. Wool threads dyed from roots and berries, scarlet, gold, midnight blue, gathered by lantern light and kettle boiled in quiet kitchens. In this room, we find Lady Isolde, a young woman with dust-colored hair gathered loosely at her nape. She moves like the wind she listens to, quiet, measured, with meaning. Her hands are steady, though time seems to slip through them like the soft, endless thread pulled from her wool basket. She sits by the narrow, arched window. A pale crescent moon hangs just outside, as if watching with curiosity. Isolde's tapestry stretches across an oaken frame. Crimson, gold, and silver shimmer softly in the firelight. Her needle glides in and out, and out, making no sound save for the faintest rustle of wool brushing wool. Can you hear it? The hush of the thread sliding through the cloth. A whisper, a memory, secret past between hands. She hums, ever so faintly. Not a song. More a rhythm like the wind in the reeds or a distant stream moving under ice. Her fingers have worked this way for years, not just to craft pictures, but to preserve history, to embed truth and beauty. Because in Lady Isolde's time, tapestries were more than decoration. They told stories for those who could not read. They were warmth and legend. And sometimes, if you knew how to look, they held messages hidden in color and shape. There, see the rose petals stitched along the knight's path? Each petal marks a day of a pilgrimage. That serpent winding near the border, silent warning about betrayal at court. Isolde knows every code. She weaves with care, and as she works, the castle sleeps. Outside, an owl calls low and slow. Inside, logs in the fireplace sigh as they shift, glowing orange, red, like embers in her tapestry's sunset. The room smells of aged wood and beeswax, and the faintest touch of lavender. From the sachet she keeps near the sill, she pauses to sip from a cup of elderflower tea, still warm, sweet, gently steeped. And then she continues, a golden thread rising again. The fire crackles softly now, a low, comforting rhythm that fills the tapestry room with warmth. The stone walls breathe out the chill they've gathered through the day, and the room begins to feel like a pocket of timeless peace, hidden from the rest of the world. Each thread a whisper. Lady Isolde leans forward, her needle moving gently again. In and out, in and out. Each stitch a breath. The tapestry tells a story of its own now. A story of a knight who sailed across seas of ice to bring light to a darkened land. The knight's armor is made of silver-gray wool, glinting with touches of metallic thread, and his eyes, Isolde, embroidered them in the shade of stormy skies.
Aye.
He looks brave. He looks lonely. He looks like someone Isolde once knew. She doesn't speak of him, but every stitch she pulls is shaped with memory. Outside, the wind picks up. Not fierce, no, but soft, like a song being carried across the moors. It slips through the cracks of the high turret window, dancing around Isolde's shoulders like a ghost from the past. She pauses, listens, and hums again. It's a tune taught to her by her mother, long ago. A lullaby sung over cribs made of oak and straw, echoed through halls now long silent. Isolde doesn't mind the silence. Of long gowns trailing through candlelight. To her it is full of flickering memories of the scent of fresh bread at dawn, polished floors. She threads more gold into the tapestry now, sewing a sun just rising behind a line of trees. The wool is dyed from marigold blossoms. Steeped for hours in copper pots, just as dyers once did in quiet abbey gardens. Every thread has a story, every color a root, and every root a hand that dug it. She hums still. Beneath her in the heart of the castle, a few servants stir in their sleep. They don't know why they dream of warm fields and old songs, but they do. Because Isolda's weaving touches more than cloth. It lives. The fire shifts again. The moon continues her slow dance across the sky, touching Isolda's cheek with a soft silver light. A new log settles, glowing warm orange. Can you feel it? It's that hush that happens when the world forgets to worry. That's the gift of the tapestry room. Outside the window, she peeks through the ivy. The needle glints. In and out, in and out. Another scene takes shape. This time, it's a chapel. It's tiny and round, with a bell tower shaped like a thimble. Isolde remembers this one.
Ow.
She passed it once on a journey north, when her father was still alive. It rang only when wind blew through its open sides. The villagers said it was how the saints whispered. She weaves it now, not because it's needed, but because it belongs, like her. The door creaks slightly on its hinge. No one comes in. The tapestry room is sacred. Only the wind visits. And tonight, it smells faintly of snow. Or maybe rosemary from the garden below. Isolde closes her eyes, lets the scent fill her lungs. And she smiles. She is not tired. Not exactly. But she feels the story settling around her like a quilt, heavy with meaning. Her fingers pause, resting on the half-finished stitch. She leans back into the soft chair, its cushions worn in the shape of her small frame. A little sigh escapes her lips, and the fire crackles, and the wind turns a little more. The tapestry glows in the firelight. Its threads shimmer like memories just out of reach, a tale told in wool, in silence and in song. Soon she will rise. She will fold the cloth and bank the fire. She will whisper her goodnights to the night, to the chapel, to the silent bell. But not just yet. For now, she lets the warmth soak in, lets her eyelids grow heavy, lets the rhythm of her breath match the rhythm of her needle, though it rests now on her lap. The hearth glows a little dimmer now, its warmth stretching across the stone floor in sleepy golden streaks. Lady Isolde remains in her chair still, as if time itself is curled up by the fire to rest a while. Somewhere deep in the castle below, a floorboard groans as if stretching its wooden limbs. But here in this turret all is still. Outside the tall, arched window, a flake of snow begins to fall. Just one. It drifts slowly through the moonlight, catching silver glimmers as it dances past the ivy. Soon, others follow, and the sky turns quiet white. Isolde doesn't open her eyes, but she knows. She can feel the hush that only snowfall brings. A hush so deep it touches the heart, so gentle it lulls even the stones to sleep. In her lap, the tapestry still rests, unfinished, yes, but somehow complete. She runs a hand lightly over it. The wool is soft beneath her fingers, still warm from the hearth. The night stands brave at the edge of the stitched forest. The chapel waits in the background, and between them, threads of gold stretch across a field, like sunlight spilled across morning frost. She thinks of the bard who once told her how some weavers stitched secret messages into their work. Tales hidden in symbols, passed hand to hand through tapestries, rugs, and cloaks. A shape here, a number of roses there, a curve in a river that wasn't part of the story, but said everything to the right eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she's doing the same. The bell in the distant chapel rings, not the one in her embroidery, but the real one, in the lower courtyard. 3 soft chimes. It's the hour of angel's breath, the time between night and dawn, when monks rise for prayers, and the world forgets it, must keep spinning. She opens her eyes, slowly, and sees the fire again. Lower now, its glow more amber than gold. The logs are small coals, resting together like kittens in sleep. She rises. A gentle motion, with no rush. Her body is stiff, but she knows every ache by name. She moves like she's done this every night, because she has. 1,000 times. Her bare feet press against the warm stones. Each step echoes faintly in the turret chamber, but not loudly, not rudely. The stones recognize her weight. they remember. She takes the tapestry and folds it with care, smoothing the edges as she would a lullaby. On the small table by the fire, she places it beside the others. A dozen folded tales, each one stitched in wool, each one full of songs. And she runs a finger along the edge of the newest. A final blessing, perhaps, kiss through touch. Then, she picks up her candle. The flame flickers gently, casting long shadows across the tapestry chair, the empty wooden loom, the little shelf of dye jars and silk-wrapped needles, and she moves to the narrow stair. Outside the turret, the corridor waits, silent and dark. But Isolde doesn't fear the dark. She never has. She once told a squire that the dark isn't empty, it's full. Full of dreams waiting to unfold, full of songs half-written, full of soft footsteps from long ago. The candle flame dances on the stone walls as she descends. Each step she takes seems to echo backward through time. To all the nights she climbed these stairs with a spool of thread, a pot of dye, or a memory waiting to become form. Down, down. Until the turret door gently closes behind her. Outside, snow falls thicker now, coats the rooftop slates in a blanket of white. The ivy glistens, and up in the tapestry room, the hearth glows low, still holding warmth for the next night's tale. Let yourself settle a little deeper now, with your head resting softly against the pillow. Feel the way your body grows heavier, lighter, all at once. As your breathing slows, and the stillness of the night folds around you like the corner of a warm woolen cloak, our story tonight continues. In the flickering candlelit quiet of a stone turret tower, where the walls remember everything, Lady Isolde sat before the tall wooden loom, its frame smooth with age, darkened by years of candle soot and gentle fingers. The shuttle glided in her hands like it had always belonged to her, back and forth, thread by thread, like breath, like heartbeat. The tapestry grew beneath her fingers, blooming with soft crimson threads and glimmers of gold, woven into the shape of a rising sun above misty hills. But this was not merely art, not simply a display for visiting nobles or a gift for a future dowry. No, this tapestry held memory. A secret memory passed down only to the women of her family. Her great-grandmother had whispered it first, that certain colors, placed in a certain rhythm, a row of blue just beneath the hawthorn branches, 3 stitches of gold shaped like falling stars, could hold meaning far beyond what the eye could see. In the hush of the cold stone tower, only the loom creaked and the candles crackled, and if you listened closely, closer still, you might hear the sound of woven voices. Stitch by stitch, the past was being remembered.
Outside.
The wind curled around the turret like a cat winding around a chair leg. The castle grounds were dark, the gate towers asleep, the horses stilled in their straw. Only the tapestry room remained awake, glowing softly with candlelight. A gust of wind brushed the shutters. Lady Isolde paused, not in fear but listening. For just beyond the creaking wood the wind carried music, distant, almost forgotten, the tune of an old lullaby. It had no name, only mothers knew it, and the weavers. It was the same tune her own nursemaid used to hum when brushing her hair. And it was said, long, long ago, that the notes had once saved a life. Isolde hummed it gently now, soft breath of melody that stirred the woolen threads, as if the tapestry itself were listening. And then, slowly, she began to weave the music into the tapestry. Yes. One note became a line of silver, arched like a songbird's wing. Another note, a swirl of pale blue like breath in winter air. Each loop of thread hummed with memory, and the air thickened with something ancient, something kind. As her fingers moved, her shoulders softened. The ache of the day dissolved into the rhythm. There was something timeless in weaving, as if the loom were a portal, and she the keeper of an old sacred doorway. The tower grew warmer, not from fire, but from meaning. Down below, a servant stoked the great hearth in the kitchen. The scent of baked apples and honeyed bread drifted up the stone stairwell, wrapping around Lady Isolde like a gentle cloak. The tapestry began to shimmer ever so faintly in the candlelight. Not magic, exactly, but remembrance. You see, in those days, a woman who wove a memory into cloth could carry it farther than a book, farther than speech. Thread didn't fade like ink. Wool didn't forget like mines did. And so the loom remembered. Pause for a moment. Let your breath fall like thread between the warp. In and out. Gently, slowly. You are safe here. Wrapped in story. Warmed by memory. Lady Isolde leaned back at last. The tapestry had grown into a garden of symbols. It wasn't finished. But something had been said without words, and it would last far beyond her lifetime. She pressed her hand gently against the cloth, and for a moment the thread seemed to pulse beneath her palm, as though echoing her own heartbeat. Far below, in the quiet castle halls, the hour bell chimed once. Midnight, she stood, slowly, carefully, stretching the stiffness from her limbs. She moved to the window, where moonlight bathed the sill. The stars outside were sharp and clear, and the wind, while cool, felt like a lullaby. She opened the window just enough to let in the air. It kissed her cheeks. And below, in the courtyard garden, the roses rustled softly. Her candle fluttered, then steadied. And in that breath of peace, Lady Isolde whispered, "To those who sleep, may your dreams be woven with light. To those who wake, may your hearts be stitched with hope." And she turned and blew the candle out. The tower, wrapped in starlight and story, grew still once more. Now take another slow breath. Let your shoulders relax just a little more. Let the warmth of this tale settle around you like a soft wool blanket fresh from the fire. There's no need to rush, ... No need to think. Just let my voice carry you deeper into the night. Our story tonight drifts onward, ... The candle had gone out, but the glow did not leave. The tapestry room held on to the hush, like an old friend reluctant to say goodbye, though Lady Isolde had returned to her bed. Tucked beneath hand-stitched quilts and linens passed down from her mother, the loom stood watchful and still by the window, its threads catching silver threads of moonlight like cobwebs spun from memory. Downstairs, the great hall of the castle lay quiet, the fire in the hearth now only embers, softly cracking in the silence. And just beyond the kitchen, a single wooden door creaked, the one that led to the linen cellar. Few ventured into that room after dark, for it was said that Lady Isolde's grandmother, the first Isolde, had woven a tapestry there, so full of sorrow, it wept at night. Of course, no one could say for sure, but the tapestries in this family were never merely decoration. They carried the weight of memory. They remembered laughter and war, and the quiet in between. In her bed, the younger Lady Isolde stirred gently in her sleep. Her dream was made of thread. She wandered through tall, sun-dappled halls, each wall draped in rich crimson and gold. Tales of old battles stitched beside dancing maidens. Chivalry and celebration mingled in wool and time. But then her dream narrowed. The light softened, and she stepped into a room made only of shadow and silk. The tapestries there whispered in languages she did not know, yet somehow understood. One tapestry showed a tree, its roots tangled with tiny faces, its leaves made from bits of song. Another displayed a fox wrapped in ivy, one paw reaching toward a star. These were not meant for guests. These were stories meant only for hearts that listened. Truly listened. Back in the waking world, the castle rested like a sleeping giant. The ivy on its outer walls barely stirred in the night air. The guards at the gate had nodded off, and the night birds had grown silent. Only the tapestry room high in the turret still hummed softly, as though the loom had a voice of its own. Its wooden joints creaked ever so slightly as if rocked gently by an invisible breeze, and there, at its base, a single golden thread, no thicker than a hair, glowed faintly in the dark. No hand had placed it. It had appeared on its own. Some say that when a weaver pours her soul into her work, the tapestry answers back, and so it was tonight. That golden thread slipped slowly through the warp, weaving itself gently across the base of the tapestry, stitching in a shape that only the stars could see. A secret, a gift, perhaps a message for the next Isolde, perhaps just a lullaby in thread form. Let yourself breathe in the stillness now, as if you were lying beside the fireplace yourself, wrapped in warm quilts, the scent of lavender from the pillow nearby, the sound of wool brushing wool, the slow, steady rhythm of the night. Lady Isolde, though deep in slumber, smiled slightly. In her dream, She had begun to hum again, the same melody she'd learned as a girl, the lullaby with no name. It threaded through her dream like moonlight through branches, and with every note another memory returned, her mother's spinning thread at dusk, the way the garden smelled after rain, the old song her father whistled when he worked the fields. A single rose pressed between the pages of an herb book. These were not grand tales. It's not the kind sung in courts or written in ink, but they were hers, and the loom remembered. Now breathe in gently, and as you breathe out, feel yourself settle a little deeper. Let your body grow heavier, as though sinking slowly into a field of soft moss beneath a willow tree. There's no need to move, no need to think, only to listen, because our story continues gently now. Where thread meets thought and dreams meet wool, our tale picks up at the break of dawn. The sky above Castle Elderstone had begun to warm, not with sunlight, but with the faintest shimmer of rose and gold. Like the blush of a candle catching a reflection in stained glass, Lady Isolde stirred in her sleep. The sound that woke her was not loud nor sudden, was the soft whisper of a breeze curling through the open shutters of her turret room. She blinked slowly, eyes still drowsy with dream dust. For a moment, she did not remember where she was, whether in this world or the one of wool and whispering trees from the night before. Then she saw it, the loom, still resting where she left it, still tall and quiet against the pale stone wall. But now something had changed. There, at the base of the tapestry, a new thread had appeared. Fine, gold. Delicate as a sunbeam caught in spider silk. She hadn't woven it, she was sure, yet it curved so gently into the pattern, as though it had always belonged there, as though the tapestry itself had breathed it into place. Isolde rose, her bare feet brushing the cool flagstone floor. Her long nightgown trailed behind her like mist, and her fingers reached out with reverence, not to touch the thread, but to trace the air just above it. Shape. A spiral. A symbol. Her grandmother had once taught her certain symbols were meant to speak, even when no words were given. This one whispered only this: begin again. And so she did. She lit a small taper candle, its flame dancing in the still gray morning, and she sat before the loom, with her wool and her mind quiet. Outside, the kitchen hearth had not yet been stirred. The bread ovens were cold. Even the roosters had not called. But up here, in this high stone turret, time began to bend. With slow, gentle hands, Isolde fed her shuttle through the warp, over, under, pull, and hum. She hummed without thinking, just as she had in her dream, the song of no name. And with every pass of the thread, the world outside seemed to hush in respect. The wind grew softer, the shadows calmed, and the very stone beneath her feet warmed, as if remembering every footstep that had ever graced this floor. She did not weave a battle, not a crest, not a legend. A loaf of bread broken in half, a cat curled on a windowsill, a daughter brushing her mother's long hair. The look a young squire gives the stars before his first ride. She wove all the little things, the things that rarely make it into stories, but without which there would be no stories at all. And as she wove, the gold thread followed, not by her hand, but by its own, gliding between colors, binding the moments together, not like a seam, but like memory. And the day moved on. The castle stirred, but softly. Cook began kneading dough below. A sleepy boy fetched kindling from the pile. The stable doors creaked open to let in light. But none of it disturbed Lady Isolde. She wove and hummed and let the gold guide her. At mid-morning, her maid brought in a small tray with honeyed oatcakes and lavender tea. The girl paused when she saw the new threads on the tapestry. "Milady," she whispered, voice barely louder than the steam from the teacup. "That's the same pattern." From the chapel windows, Isolde turned her head slowly. Yes, she saw it now. The gold spiral. The shapes between the images. They mirrored the stained glass that lined the castle's small chapel, a place of quiet reflection, tucked behind the orchard wall. But how? She hadn't been to the chapel in weeks. And yet, Thread remembered. Let yourself drift now. Feel the softness of hand-woven wool against your cheek. The warmth of sunlight on ancient stone, a scent of lavender and beeswax, and the hush of history lingering just behind your breath. The tapestry is not finished yet, nor is our tale. But you may rest here a while longer. Before we return to the loom once more, feel your breath, moving like the rhythm of a quiet thread drawn through soft cloth. You are warm here. You are still. There's nothing to do now. But listen, because our story continues. In the still hours of afternoon, inside the turret of quiet dreams, Lady Isolde had paused. The loom stood patiently before her, but her gaze was far away, fixed not on wool or warp or thread, but on the pattern forming in her mind. A memory stirred, faint as a moth's wing. She remembered her uncle once saying that some tapestries were more than decoration. Some carried messages, hidden messages, codes woven in silk and gold used by kings and spies alike during long wars and colder alliances. A red border meant danger. A broken vine meant betrayal, could whisper secrets to those who knew how to see. The placement of animals, flowers, even cloud shapes. She looked at her own tapestry now and felt a tingle pass across the skin of her arm. Not fear, not surprise, something softer. Recognition. Because there beside the image of a girl placing bread on a doorstep was a bird in flight. And not just any bird. In medieval England, the wren was often called the king of the birds, a tiny creature said to have outsmarted the eagle by hiding beneath its wings. And here it was again perched atop a chapel spire, and again, this time tucked beneath a thatched roof. 3 wrens, 3 placements, and all perfectly spaced. Like a code. Isolde's breath slowed. Her fingers moved to her lap, resting lightly on the edge of her shawl. It wasn't that she meant to weave messages. Something gentle and quiet had been guiding the pattern, something deep within her, like a memory older than thought. 3 wrens. She whispered it aloud, and the air around her stilled as if listening. Outside, the wind had settled. The sun had dipped past the edge of the orchard, casting golden light across the stone floor, turning every thread on the loom into strands of fire and silk. She reached again for the shuttle. Her fingers, so often stiff from the chill, moved with unusual grace. The thread passed through, and the wren beneath the roof gained a glimmer of new detail. A ring of ivy leaves curled at its feet, a symbol of endurance, of eternal life, a love that never lets go. Isolde closed her eyes. She let the thread rest, and for a time she simply listened, to the quiet tick of the candle's burn, to the pop of settling stone, to the slow breath of the tower as it remembered the centuries it had seen. And beyond that, deeper still, to the hush of stories carried not by voice, but by thread. There had been a time when noble women were forbidden to write letters, okay? A time when their thoughts, hopes, and longings could only be stitched in cloth. A bloom placed near a knight's figure, a tear-shaped curve of silver thread, a bird that flies toward the rising sun, without saying a word. So much said. And Lady Isolde was speaking now, though perhaps she did not know what she was saying. But the thread did. Later, just as dusk began to brush the turret window with lavender shadows, a soft knock came at the door. It was the steward. He carried a scroll tied with wax, a message from the outer estate. But as he handed it to her, his eyes drifted to the tapestry and lingered. "My lady," he murmured, "I've seen that same ivy ring carved in the church gate at Wenslow, just like in your weaving." Isolde tilted her head, curious. She had never been to Wenslow, but the thread had. Or the memory of it had. She offered the steward a polite smile and nodded. Once he'd gone, she unrolled the scroll with care. Its words were simple. A request from a widow who lived beyond the woods. Her daughter had fallen ill. There was no physician nearby, but they had heard of Lady Isolde's healing knowledge and begged for help. Isolde folded the letter. She stood and turned once more to the tapestry, and suddenly she knew. The ivy, the wren, the chapel. It was not just memory. It was a map. The golden thread had shown the way. Let yourself breathe gently now. Let the hush of dusk settle around you like a soft woolen blanket. Imagine the scent of ivy and candle wax, the touch of worn stone beneath your hand, the shimmer of a golden thread dancing with firelight. Lady Isolde has a journey ahead. But for now, she rests. And you may rest too. Let yourself drift a little deeper. Feel your chest rise and fall, just like a sail catching soft wind on a gentle sea. The fire has dimmed. The shadows stretch softly across the stone. Our story continues. In the stillness between twilight and nightfall, Lady Isolde stood quietly in the doorway of the turret. Her shawl wrapped warmly around her shoulders, her cane resting beside her, though she rarely needed it. The tapestry behind her waited, its colors now painted with memory, mystery, and meaning. Below the turret, the castle murmured in its sleep.
Ow.
Distant pots clinked in the kitchens. The hush of stable hay being turned drifted faintly up through the stones. All around her, life breathed quietly. Not hurried, not loud, just steady. And somewhere in the forest beyond, a daughter needed her. It had been many years since Lady Isolde had walked the wood paths, even more since she'd crossed the river bridge near the orchard. The one lined with mossy stones and tiny ivy leaves that curled like the ones in her thread. She did not question it now. The tapestry had spoken. It had laid out a path in symbols and softness, one only the heart could follow. She packed light. Just a satchel of herbs, a folded parchment map, a spool of golden thread, still warm from her hands. Before she left, she ran her fingers gently down the tapestry's edge, feeling each bump in the weave like the pages of a whispered book. "I'll be back," she whispered, "to finish you." And then she stepped out. The courtyard smelled of winter bark and cold stone. Lanterns had been lit, soft amber glows in iron sconces, throwing circles of light that blinked like fireflies on the cobbles. A stable hand met her there. His name was Elias, barely more than 16. He had kind eyes and steady hands. He offered her the reins of a calm brown mare named Ashleaf, her fur dusted with frost. "I saddled her slow, my lady," Elias said gently, so she wouldn't wake too much. Isolde nodded, and the horse leaned into the touch, as if recognizing the stillness in her rider's soul. She brushed her hand down the mare's warm neck. The journey would be quiet. No torches, no trumpets. Only soft hoofbeats on frozen earth and the hush of breath in the air. As she mounted, Elias tucked a small object into her satchel. From the cook, he whispered, "Anissa's bread, still warm." She smiled. Warmth passed between them not just from food, but from care. And then she rode. The road to Wenslow curved gently beyond the apple grove and into the forest. Where tree limbs arched overhead like the ribs of a chapel, snow had not fallen yet, but frost glistened on every branch like sugar-dusted lace, just enough to remind the world that someone was passing through. Each step of the mare's hooves crunched softly, not sharp. Above them, the stars turned slowly. In medieval lore, it was said that stars weren't just lights. They were holes poked through the velvet sky by the ancestors, letting their light and love trickle down. And so, as Isolde rode beneath that patchwork of stars, she imagined familiar faces smiling down on her, not with words, but with warmth. At the forest's edge, she paused. The path split. Here one trail curved around the cliffs and toward the coast. The other led directly to the chapel ruins near Winslow, where the wren in her tapestry had perched. Isolde's fingers reached for her satchel. She didn't need the map. She already knew. The golden thread tugged gently at her memory, pulling her like a stream pulls a leaf. She turned down the left path, and the trees closed in behind her. Let yourself imagine it now. The hush of the forest, the crackle of thin frost under hoof, the occasional flutter of a bird in sleep, rustling high above, and the steady, peaceful heartbeat of someone who listens deeply to the world around her. Lady Isolde was not afraid. She knew the way, even if she did not know the road. For what is a journey but a tapestry in motion? Each step a stitch, each breath a thread. And somewhere up ahead, a girl awaited. And a tapestry was still waiting to be finished. Take another deep breath now. Let it move slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth. There's no rush here, no weight to carry, just this soft stillness. And a story unfolding like golden thread, our tale continues. Beneath branches that glisten with frost and under stars that hum like distant lullabies, Lady Isolde rode on. Ashleaf, her mare, moved gracefully beneath her hooves, muffled on the winter path. There was no wind now, only the quiet hush of trees, and the occasional sleepy chirp of a night bird tucked in close to bark and bough. And soon the forest began to open. The trees thinned. The air grew colder. And up ahead, rising like a ghost from the roots, stood the old chapel of Wenslow, or what was left of it. Its stone walls still stood, proud in places, crumbled in others. A wooden door leaned askew. Vines of ivy twisted, silvered with frost, climbed up its face like time itself had tried to cover it in secrets. But Lady Isolde smiled when she saw it, because she recognized the curve of that arch. It was just like the one in her tapestry, where the wren had perched. Ashleaf stopped gently before the door, and Isolde dismounted, her shawl brushing the mare's side. She placed her hand on the door and pushed. It creaked softly. It opened. The air inside was cooler, but not unfriendly. It smelled of old stone, wax, and dusted herbs. Above, the beams still held strong. The stained glass, though faded, caught the moonlight in soft waves of red and blue. And just ahead, beneath a crooked window, a wooden pew had been cleared. Someone had been here. Recently, a bundle of cloth lay on the seat tucked neatly. Beside it, a feather, brown with the white fleck of a wren. Isolde stepped closer. She touched the bundle carefully with 2 fingers. Inside herbs had been wrapped in linen, chamomile, marshmallow root, and a sprig of elderflower remedies, just like the one she used. She smiled again. It was as if someone knew she would come, or had been. Following the same thread, she sat slowly on the pew, placing her satchel beside her, and for a long moment she simply breathed. Let yourself feel that peace now, the air cool against your cheeks, the scent of wild herbs, the echo of centuries beneath your feet. This chapel had seen joy and sorrow, and now hope. And here, in this soft hour, Lady Isolde rested. Later, she lit a small beeswax candle from her satchel and placed it in the old iron holder on the wall. Its flame danced, gently casting golden rings across the stone. She unfolded a scrap of parchment and her charcoal pencil, and there, by the candle's glow, she began to sketch the pattern of her tapestry. Not the one at home, a new one. And this one began with a chapel beneath ivy, a brown wren perched on its edge, and beside it, a mare named Ashleaf and a woman with a golden spool. She didn't know what the full design would become, but she had faith in the thread. Just as the stars turned slowly overhead, the pattern would reveal itself in time. Outside, the trees whispered again. A breeze had returned, soft, steady, like breath in the lungs of the forest. Lady Isolde stood, her parchment folded in her hands. And as she stepped outside, the moonlight bathed her in silver. The ivy beside the chapel door shifted slightly. Tucked just beneath one vine was a carving, old, weather-worn, but clear enough to see. A ring of ivy leaves, with a single thread curling through its center, the same symbol from her tapestry. She traced it with her fingers, not in surprise, but in recognition, because sometimes stories echo through time, and sometimes they find the right hands to finish them. Let yourself feel that hush again, the comfort of discovery, the gentleness of threads remembered, and the sense that everything is unfolding as it should. Lady Isolde will ride again come morning, but for now, the fire is low. The candle burns soft, and sleep is near. Take a deep breath in, and let it melt out slowly. You're safe here, warm, still gently drifting. The story continues. In the quiet hush just before dawn, when the stars have not yet faded, but the first blush of morning brushes the edge of the sky, Lady Isolde had returned home. Ashleif's hooves whispered against the earth, and the gentle creak of the saddle straps was the only sound beside the breeze. When she reached the castle gates, they opened silently, pret-on guards nodding with sleepy respect, lanterns casting golden light across the stone.
Ow.
The tower waited for her, quiet and candlelit, and when she stepped inside, the tapestry was waiting too, still there on the loom, finished, yet brimming with presence. Isolde's fingers hovered near it. She hadn't planned what to weave next. but her hands knew, as if the story lived in her wrists, not her mind. She sat down, slowly, and with the gentlest touch, drew the shuttle across. Soft light filtered in no morning light, not gold or flame, but pale and pearled. Like milk poured into tea, she wove a chapel. She wove a ring of ivy. She wove a small feather tucked into a corner. One edge frayed, and then, without planning it, she began to weave a figure. It wasn't her, not exactly. It was a girl in a hooded cloak, standing between the chapel and the forest, holding a basket, and behind her a thread, a single, delicate line of golden yarn, stretching behind her footsteps and disappearing into the trees. Not tied, not tangled, just present, a gentle trail, left for someone else to follow. Isolde paused. She leaned back in her chair, shawl wrapped warmly over her arms, and looked at what she had made. There was a story there, but also a message. Not only for her, maybe not for anyone yet born, but one day someone might see the wren, the ivy, the chapel, the feather, the girl, the thread, and they might understand. Long ago, it had been said that women's voices were like music meant to be heard, but not remembered, that their thoughts should be stitched, not spoken. But Lady Isolde's tapestry sang, quietly, not with noise, but with warmth, with hush, with light and wool and silence. And she knew without question that what she was weaving would outlive her, that the girl with the basket would walk beyond the edge of the forest, that the thread would stretch through time, and that someone, somewhere, someday, would find it. Let yourself sink a little deeper now, as if your thoughts were feathers, and the air itself was made of down, soft, safe, quiet. Lady Isolde placed her shuttle down gently on the loom, and moved to the window. The orchard below was dressed in dew. The birds had not yet begun their song, but one wren perched on the sill, as if waiting. She smiled, and whispered so softly only the morning could hear it. "Thank you." Was she thanking the wren, the loom, the thread, perhaps? All of them. Because in her quiet heart she felt it clearly now. The tapestry was not hers alone. It had come through her. But it belonged to something larger. That evening, she added a new border to the cloth's soft green and amber, like forest leaves at dusk, and in its corner, a tiny detail, a hidden curve, shaped like a sleeping moon, almost invisible unless the light caught it just so. A symbol, for those who knew how to look beneath it, in the finest stitch she could manage. She wove a name, not hers, not anyone's really, just a single word. Listen. Let yourself feel that word now. Listen. Not just with your ears, but with your skin. With your stillness. With the quiet part of you that remembers things you've never been told. The part that sees meaning in soft colors, and hears lullabies in candlelight. That's where this story lives, not only in the past, but in you, here now, as you drift, and dream, and rest. Close your eyes now, and let the hush of evening settle around you like a cloak of soft wool. Breathe in, as if the world has grown still just for you, and breathe out, as if letting go of the day itself, because our story continues.
Oh.
On a night when the moon rose round and low, casting its silvery path across the orchard grass, Lady Isolde sat in her tower, alone, but not lonely. A gentle fire crackled beside her, and the tapestry glowed with the gold of candlelight and starlight mingled. She was nearly finished. The loom no longer looked like a frame of wood and wool. It looked like a window into another world. The world of her memories, the world of her dreams, and the world of those still to come. Outside the castle was quiet. Servants had retired early, and no footsteps echoed in the stone halls. Even the wind seemed to tiptoe tonight, brushing only the highest turret with its breath. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full, full of meaning, full of peace, full of presence. Lady Isolde placed the final thread through the border of pale cream line, finer than silk. It danced beneath her fingers like moonlight on water. She tied it softly, a knot barely visible, not to bind it, but to complete it. Then she rested the shuttle against the loom and rose to stretch. The candlelight flickered across her face. The shadows were long now, but not frightening, only gentle, like hands folding around the edges of a lullaby. She moved to the open window and looked up, and gasped softly. Above her, the sky was falling, not in fear, but in light. A meteor shower, soft streaks of fire slipping silently across the heavens. She hadn't seen one in years. In the Middle Ages, people often believed falling stars carried messages from the divine, or warnings from the spirits. But tonight, Isolde felt no warning, only wonder. She watched each glowing line trace across the dark, like golden threads, and she smiled. It felt in some strange and perfect way, as if the sky itself was weaving, drawing its own pattern, it's telling its own story, stitching something vast and unseen into the fabric of the night. She whispered into the wind, "I see you." A single wren called back from the orchard below. Not a cry, just a note, acknowledgement, companionship. She returned to the loom, and with hands light as breath, she touched the tapestry one final time. It didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt offered to the world, to the future, to the stars. And she knew without knowing how she knew that someone, someday, would find it and understand. Now let yourself rest in that knowing too, that stories are never truly lost. They live in fabric, in soil, in dreams. They wait for soft hearts and quiet minds, just like yours. And as the stars fall overhead and the wren sings once more from the orchard, Lady Isolde lets her eyes close. The fire settles low, the wind hushes, and sleep folds around the tower like velvet. You may drift now, as slow as a falling thread, soft as the moon's kiss on stone. Let your breathing be slow now, slow as a candle's flicker just before dawn. Let your body soften, ... Like a woolen cloak warmed beside the hearth, there is no hurry. There is only here. ... And now. And the whisper of our story continuing. Because while you rested beneath the safe weight of nighttime moved like a sleepy river, and morning has returned. The first light of day was not loud. It was not gold, nor bold, nor sudden. It was quiet. It's like silk drawn across a polished table. It's like flowers settling through the air. Lady Isolde opened her eyes to it. She lay not in her weaving chair, but nestled in a blanket on the window bench. Someone, perhaps the steward, perhaps no one at all, had draped it over her as she dozed. The fire was embers now, glowing faintly in the grayness of dawn. The room was cool, but not cold, and a gentle stillness wrapped around her limbs. She sat up slowly. Outside, the wren called once again. Not urgent, just ... familiar. She walked barefoot to the tapestry. It was finished. And in the fresh morning light, the colors had changed. Not truly, of course. But the way they lived upon the fabric had shifted. What was deep crimson by candlelight now glowed a soft rose. The gold shimmered like pale honey. The green had turned from forest to meadow. It was the same piece, and yet different. That, she thought, was the way of stories. They looked one way at night, and another in the morning, just like dreams. Her fingers traced the border slowly. She felt no need to speak, only to witness. The tapestry showed not just images, but moments. A loaf of bread shared in silence. A garden overgrown and still alive. A chapel with ivy climbing up its face. 3 wrens, always 3. And in one quiet corner, barely visible at first glance, was a woman with silver hair, kneeling beside a child. The child held a flower. The woman, a thread Isolde, felt a warmth rise in her chest. It's not sadness, not pride, just warmth, like something coming home. She turned toward the window again. The village below was waking. Thin columns of chimney smoke rose into the morning sky. Distant voices echoed soft and slow. And from the orchard, the first blush of apples had appeared. She reached for her shawl and draped it gently across her shoulders. There was work to be done today. Not the kind found on looms, but the kind made with footsteps. She remembered the scroll, the widow's request, the girl in need, the map hidden in thread. She would go, not out of duty, but because the path had already been sown, stitched quietly in the rhythm of the warp and weft. She had only to follow it. You may rest now, dear listener, or drift deeper still, because this journey is soft, asks nothing of you but stillness. Breathe in, as if gathering a morning breeze. Breathe out, as if laying down the weight of worry. Lady Isolde gathers her basket, wraps herself in her cloak, and takes her first steps down the spiral stair. Each footfall, like the slow beat of a lullaby, she follows the threads that morning left behind. Let yourself grow still. Let your eyes soften, your shoulders loosen. Let each word feel like a fingertip smoothing the creases of your day. Because now, the story drifts onward. Our footsteps are quiet ones. Our tale resumes. In the early hush of morning, Lady Isolde stepped beyond the threshold of the turret, the only home she had known for many years, and out into the cool breath of the world. Her boots crunched gently on dew-touched gravel, and the wind pulled playfully at the hem of her cloak. The bird's song had not yet filled the sky, but here and there a note rang through the trees, a promise of life waking. In her arms, a simple basket. Inside it, folded linens, a pot of wound balm, a small jar of sweet preserved pear slices, and tucked beneath it all, the smallest skein of golden thread, just in case. She walked past the orchard, where apples blushed in clusters of red and gold. She passed the still sleeping village, where windows blinked open slowly, like eyes in dream. And she turned onto the forest path, one she had not taken since she was a girl. The trees here were old. They curved above her like the rafters of a cathedral, their leaves whispering in languages only wind could translate. The path wound gently, and with every step, her mind loosened. Memories floated up like bubbles in spring water. She remembered, when she first learned that a stitch could carry meaning, her mother had shown her a single bloom sewn beneath a knight's horse. "It means he rides home," she had whispered, "not to war." Or the blue star embroidered behind a cradle, a wish for dreams. Or a crow beside a garden gate. "Careful now," her mother had warned. "Some stories are meant to stay behind the gate." Isolde smiled faintly at the thought. Even now, the wind between the trees seemed to murmur those same tales, soft and slow, like lullabies meant only for those who truly listened. Further down the path, moss thickened beneath her feet. The world dimmed slightly beneath the trees, as if the forest itself was shading her eyes so that her heart might see more clearly. She passed a fallen log. A squirrel watched her from the shadows, then blinked, then vanished. Even that felt part of the story, like punctuation in a sentence not yet finished. A fork in the road appeared, marked by an old stone post covered in ivy. Here, she paused. She set the basket down, rested her hands on her cane, and listened. In the distance so faint it might have been imagined, came the chime of a chapel bell. 3 tones. Winslow. The thread had been true. She took the left path, feeling the forest part gently for her passing. As she walked, the golden light of morning pierced through the trees. Dancing across her cloak in flashes of amber, she closed her eyes for a moment and walked by feel. Just her breath, the rhythm of her cane, the hush of leaves, and the memory of the tapestry tucked behind her thoughts. There was no rush, no danger, just the next quiet step. Let yourself drift now, dear listener, as if you too are beneath ancient trees, walking on soft earth, guided by scent and shadow and morning song. Let your hands rest, let your heart slow. Isolde walks gently ahead of you, her pace sure, but never hurried. Because stories like this aren't measured in miles, but in hushes, in breaths, in the warm thread of feeling carried between two hearts across time. Further down the path, moss thickened beneath her feet. The world dimmed slightly beneath the trees, as if the forest itself was shading her eyes so that her heart might see more clearly. She passed a fallen log. A squirrel watched her from the shadows, then blinked, then vanished. Even that felt part of the story, like punctuation in a sentence not yet finished. A fork in the road appeared, marked by an old stone post covered in ivy. Here, she paused. She set the basket down, rested her hands on her cane, and listened. In the distance so faint it might have been imagined, came the chime of a chapel bell. 3 tones. Winslow. The thread had been true. She took the left path, feeling the forest part gently for her passing. As she walked, the golden light of morning pierced through the trees. Dancing across her cloak in flashes of amber, she closed her eyes for a moment and walked by feel. Just her breath, the rhythm of her cane, the hush of leaves, dot, dot, and the memory of the tapestry tucked behind her thoughts. There was no rush, no danger, just the next quiet step. Let yourself drift now, dear listener, as if you too are beneath ancient trees, walking on soft earth, guided by scent and shadow and morning song. Let your hands rest, let your heart slow. Isolde walks gently ahead of you, her pace sure, but never hurried. Because stories like this aren't measured in miles, but in hushes, in breaths. In the warm thread of feeling carried between 2 hearts across time. She worked slowly, wiping, whispering, laying the balm in slow circles, her fingers tracing a shape she knew by heart. A spiral, the ancient sign of healing and of time. The woman her mother watched in silence, tears caught in the corners of her eyes. And through the colored windows, a shaft of morning light slid across the child's face. Her breathing deepened. The chapel seemed to hold its breath. Even the dust in the air moved slower now. And Lady Isolde, still kneeling, felt something settle in her heart. Not pride. Not relief. Something older. A remembering. She rose carefully. The mother took her hands in both of hers, pressed them to her lips, then said nothing at all. No words were needed. The thread had already spoken. Isolde turned back toward the door. Outside, the day had warmed. The air smelled of rising bread and lavender fields beyond the hill. She stepped out into it, slowly, like a page turning. Let your breath follow hers now, in and out, softly. As the chapel fades behind us, let your thoughts grow quiet. You're walking again, but lighter, with peace in your chest. And a golden thread trailing gently behind you. The road back to the castle was quiet. Soft earth beneath her boots, the occasional rustle of dry leaves stirred by a rabbit's dash, and the low hum of wind through the trees. Lady Isolde walked slowly, her shawl wrapped close, her cane tapping a steady rhythm like a lullaby beneath her steps. Above her, the canopy of trees shimmered with morning light, gold flecks dancing through the leaves, casting moving shadows on the path like threads of living tapestry. And though the journey was long, there was no hurry. The day had unfolded gently, and so did her thoughts. Each turn in the path whispered an echo, where she had picked wild yarrow as a child. There where her mother once showed her how to read the shape of moss on tree trunks to find her way home. Everything seemed touched by memory, not in a loud or heavy way, but like soft embroidery beneath the surface of her day. She let those memories rise and pass, just as she had let the thread slip through her fingers. Back in the tower, the tapestry room. Home. By midday, the castle came into view, its high walls brushed with ivy, its flags whispering in the breeze. But before she reached the gate, Lady Isolde paused. There on the side of the hill stood a single oak tree. She had not noticed it before, but it stood tall and old and welcoming. She turned from the path and stepped toward it, her cane sinking gently into the mossy ground. Beneath the tree's shade, she found a bench, simple, worn, and waiting. She sat. Let's sit with her now. Let your breath grow even slower. Let your mind gently wander, like sunlight through high branches. The tree above her had seen many seasons, many footsteps, many lives passing quietly through time. She placed her basket beside her and rested both hands on her lap. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, a gentle, even rhythm. And in that stillness, thought stirred like a whisper. She had not just followed a map. She had become one. The wren in the tapestry, the ivy ring, the golden thread. They were more than symbols. They were invitations to remember, to tend, to weave care into the world even when no one was watching. And in doing so, she had become part of something bigger, a quiet keeper of the old ways. The wind lifted her shawl lightly. She pulled it close. The fabric smelled of lavender and candle smoke, the smell of home. And just then, in the stillness beneath the oak, a single bird landed on the branch above, a wren small, still brightened. It looked at her, not afraid, just aware. Lady Isolde smiled. She said nothing, but her heart felt warm. The thread had come full circle. Let your eyes grow heavy now. Let your breath drift like a feather on quiet air. Lady Isolde will walk the final stretch soon. Act through the gate. Past the courtyard stones, up the spiral stairs, to the tapestry room. But for now she rests, and so may you. In the company of stories that whisper, and the hush of threads that know your name. The great wooden door creaked softly as Lady Isolde pushed it open. The tapestry room greeted her not with words, but with warmth. Golden afternoon light spilled through the tall turret window, casting slow dancing beams across the polished floor. Dust motes floated like lazy snowflakes, quiet as breath. She stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind her. Let yourself enter with her. Feel the hush. The still air, warm with woven memory. The scent of beeswax, soft wool and pressed herbs. Here, the world was not loud. Here it moved by the quiet rhythm of hands and thread and story. Her tapestry still sat waiting on the loom, just as she had left it, but somehow it felt different now, more complete. She walked toward it slowly, trailing her fingers along the edge of the wooden frame. The birds were still there, so were the chapel, the girl with the bread, the curl of ivy. But now there was something else. She hadn't added it, not consciously. But in the bottom corner, woven in delicate shadow thread, was the image of a tree, not large, not central, but rooted, firm, still, and beneath it, just barely visible, a bench. She felt her heart tug gently, like a pulled thread. Yes, the tapestry had grown with her. She sat in her chair, let her hands rest in her lap, closed her eyes. Outside, bells rang softly in the distance, calling the village to evening prayer. But in this room, no bell was needed. Here, time was slower, quieter, deeper. Let your breath deepen again. Let your body grow still. You're in the tapestry room now. You're a part of its hush, its warmth, its memory. Lady Isolde remained in that chair for a long while. She didn't need to weave. Not now. Instead, she listened. To the wind moving across the tower, to the settling of stones, to the memory of footsteps on long-forgotten stairwells, to the threads, always the threads, whispering their gentle, patient stories. At twilight, she lit a single candle. Its golden glow joined the colors on the loom, a final light for a final thread. She reached once more for the shuttle, drew a soft breath, and passed the golden strand through the weft. A single line, no pattern, no symbol. It's just a simple closing thread. She tied it carefully, trimmed the end, and the tapestry was done. Now let yourself rest completely. Lady Isolde stands once more. She folds a woolen cloth around her shoulders, extinguishes the candle. And with one last glance at the tapestry, she smiles. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. It carries memory, meaning, mystery, and above all, gentleness. She leaves the room, and as the door closes, the soft threads breathe a little sigh, content and quiet. And full, the wind moves gently through the window, turning the last candle smoke into a spiral of light. Some say you can still see the tapestry. Tucked away in a turret forgotten by time, the golden thread glowing softly, never fading, waiting for dreamers, for quiet hearts, for those who listen, like you. Sleep now. Let yourself drift into the hush of centuries. You're part of the story now, and the thread will always remember you.